think outside the box, if you will. I mean, go there, go off campus. Let's think this through. And sure enough, that's where the Mustang was born. When it finally hit, it took the country by storm.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another edition of Cars in Context. I'm your host, John Clor. Today, we're with Joe Babiasz, our favorite automotive historian.
Hi John, good
Joe,
to see you again.
It's great to be here. We're down in downtown Ypsilanti in Depot Town, just down the street from Eastern Michigan University. You know, we've done that show about that wonderful Hudson dealership, the old Miller Motors, and we came back to the Automotive Heritage Museum here in Ypsilanti to take you through another part of our rich history in Detroit. And that really, it started in this area, Joe, with the Arsenal of Democracy in Willow Run.
Yes.
You know, this area of the world was known for getting us through World War II, and really the reason why we powered our way to win that war was right here in Ypsilanti and all the Willow Run factory. A lot of people don't know that this is also the home of a lot of other car companies. Apex was here, and
Kaiser-Frazer.
Kaiser-Frazer, which is a real popular, we'll take you into that history a little bit as well, and also the home of Preston Tucker and the Tucker automobile, which they did a Hollywood movie about.
That's right.
But then again, as it moved on, General Motors actually moved into the Willow Run plant. They built your favorite Corvair Monza here. They built the Chevy 2 and the Nova.
The Novas.
A lot of history here. Hydromatic.
Hydromatic was here, actually right in the 50s, or 40s and 50s.
Another good piece of history. So what we want to do today, folks, we want to take you inside Ypsilanti's Automotive Heritage Museum and take you back to see some of that rich automotive heritage, a lot of the great names that really came through this area of the United States. We'll do that right now. We'll go talk to our buddy Bill Nickles in there. Let's take you back in time, folks. Come on,
let's go.
Hi, and welcome again to Cars in Context. I'm your host, John Clor. You know, we're so excited to be here today at the Ypsilanti Automotive Heritage Museum, just down the street from Eastern Michigan University. We're here in Depot Town, and we wanted to take you through this little secret spot, if you will, for all you auto buffs that may not know our rich history in this area. It's really a cool place and really worth your time to come down. Today we're joined by one of our favorite auto historians, Joe Babiasz.
Hi, John.
Joe, thanks for finding this wonderful place and bringing us down.
My pleasure.
And of course, from the museum itself, Bill Nickles.
Thank you,
Bill,
John.
Oh, thank you for being on Cars in Context. You guys are really going to enjoy this because I know when you think of this little place just down the street in Ypsi, you think about Miller Motors and the Hudson dealership, which we've had a show on. But this is the part I think that a lot of people would be very surprised to find there's a lot more history to Ypsilanti and this little than this little Hudson dealership. This area is so steeped in our automotive heritage that I think people will be very surprised when they come visit you, Bill, to see all the kinds of things that really started. The manufacturing started way before the war, but the war really brought the exclamation point. We're standing in an area. I know our favorite GI is back there in the corner, but you've got this wonderful sign. Tell us a little bit about the history of Ypsilanti and the bomber plant in Willow Run.
Yeah, well, last half of the 20th century automotive history began with the advent of World War II. When World War II occurred, they were building B-24 bombers in California, and it took them a full day to build one bomber.
One a day?
Yeah. And Henry Ford talked to President Roosevelt and said, President Roosevelt, you build me a factory, I will build you a bomber every hour. Those conversations occurred in 1941, and so by the time 1942 rolled around, we had the largest factory under one roof in the world, built here just a mile south of here. And in that factory, we were building one bomber an hour, just as Henry Ford had promised.
What a massive idea to take. I've got this idea in my head. We're going to build a bomber plant. We're going to use automotive systems, this moving assembly line.
Exactly right.
And then these guys were able to get this thing in their head, build the plant, and start building bombers within a couple of years?
Well, and at 41, the idea originated. They broke ground, I think, in April of 41. And by before the end of 1942, they were making their bomber every hour.
That's amazing.
Unbelievable. I know my mother-in-law got a job when her husband went off to Pearl Harbor in World War II. She was a Rosie the Riveter, and she did spend time here in Willow. She lived up in Wayne, Michigan, and we know this area pretty well. But a lot of people don't realize that if it weren't for the automotive industry's expertise, if you will, in sub-assemblies and something as complex as a bomber,
Yep.
Both of these bombers were, I mean, let's face it, without the, B-17 and B-24s, that
Yep.
was the Air Force.
That was during World War II, that was it. You talk about Rosie the Riveter, my wife is a rosebud. Rosebuds are daughters of Rosies.
Oh, how interesting.
Well, there we go.
That's awesome.
That is really
Yep.
cool. Well, then, so the companies that were involved here wasn't just Ford Motor Company.
Well, it was the factory was the beginning of it all. And after the factory no longer had the need for bomber plants, we had a very large factory that was empty,
Right.
and a factory that was empty, and we had a country that was dying for new cars.
Wow, perfect.
There you go.
Yep.
Sounds like the
Perfect
perfect
storm.
Yep.
So we wound up having a couple of companies come here. Tell us a little bit about a brand a lot of people may not remember, the Kaiser-Frazer brand.
Yeah, it was Joseph Fraser and Henry J. Kaiser. Henry J. Kaiser was in the boat business during World War II. And Joseph Fraser was a car guy. He actually was employed by Graham Page. And both of them made quite a bit of money during World War II. So they decided they would like to create a company, which they created Kaiser Fraser Corporation in 1945. Created the corporation. They were not like Hudson, Ford, or General Motors or Chrysler. They didn't have pre-war models to rely on to start production right away. So they had to go through the design work, and it took them until 1947 before they had their first cars out.
They used
the bomber plant.
Wow.
And you look at that large space where the cars are coming down the assembly line, you have to visualize B-24 bombers coming down that as an assembly line process.
unbelievable.
Yep.
Joe, this brand, a lot of people in the area really took to the Kaiser-Frazer and the Henry J, some of the cool little cars they built.
Sure. Actually, they had peak production, I think, in 1 year of almost 100,000 units, about 91,000 cars. It was their peak production.
What would you say their
So-
calling card was, Joe? I mean, talk about
Well, you know, they were known for really nice interiors and really good quality. And so they were really a good car. And keep in mind, because they didn't bring out a refreshed pre-war car,
Right.
it was a clean sheet car. So it was the newest and the latest of everything they had to work with in 47. There was still a seller's market. People liked the product. It was something different than a GM, Ford, or Chrysler car. And it took off for a while.
Yeah.
For a while.
It looked nothing like the pre-war cars, which just
Right.
had to be just gussied up a little bit until the other big three could come up with a new model. This was a very fresh-looking car. But do you have a couple examples of these here?
Yeah, when you talk about special too, you know, the Hudson and the Fords and the Chryslers, they all had the fenders
Right.
in 1946 that were the pre-war cars. The style of the first Kaiser Fraser came out, they used the word slab styling. You didn't have the distinct fenders like the pre-war cars had. And that was something that was brand new and fresh that people liked.
Well, let's go take a look, Joe, at some of these wonderful cars we have.
Yeah,
here.
let's do it.
Well, when we talk about the really cool cars that Kaiser Fraser made and the advances that they had to make, Joe, I think the cool thing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Bill, but when you're coming out with a fresh car and everybody else's car looks like it happened before the war, which it really did,
Yep.
and then you come out with something like this 1948 Kaiser
Yep.
Special, Joe, don't we have something that will catch somebody's eye?
This certainly wouldn't 48, and keep in mind, this car looked the same for their 47 model, and it was 2 years ahead of what most, like a Ford slab-sided type car. Very, very sleek looking.
Yeah.
It didn't have the fender bulges. It didn't have didn't have any rockers on the
It doesn't
bottom.
look like anything's hanging off. It's like cut from a slab of fresh granite,
So,
if you will.
Yeah, very sleek design.
I gotta love this gigantic,
Right,
wonderful badge.
yes,
That looks
yes.
like it's the big K with a buffalo on the
Yep.
front. And look at that Kaiser. I mean, this is in your face.
Yep.
Kind of, we've got something special here. Now, this thing, $2,300, Joe, that was a lot of
That
money back
that was pricey. I mean, Fords at that time were probably $1,700, $1,800
Yep.
for a Ford. So this was a premium car. This was a higher end car.
then. And they were known for the fact that they had this styling. But don't forget, let's face it, this is their top line model, right? I mean, this is,
But no, Kaiser Fraser had the two lines. The Kaiser was actually the lower price, and the
Wow.
Fraser was the higher
well,
price
here's
car.
a Fraser, guys. Let's take a look at the difference here now between 51 and 48. Wow. Now, this looks more like the cars we associate with the early 50s, Bill.
Yep.
This is actually a different generation?
Yeah, Kaiser Fraser went through 2 generations.
Okay.
The 47 through 50 model, and then in 51 they came out with this car, and the car next to it is part of the 2nd generation. And again, this is the Fraser, which is a higher end one.
Okay.
Now, John, this is almost $2,800. Again, that's a lot of money back in
It sure
1951.
is. Yep.
Yeah, but look at the front end styling. Now, you're starting to look at, when you think about 49 and 50 Fords, 51, 52 Fords.
Very bland.
But awesome,
Yep.
good ornament, let's face it. And with the kind of like the knight up on there. These cars, they had a road presence. Now, horsepower-wise, engine-wise, were they known to be reliable?
Well, they had the Continental engine, which was a pre-war engine.
Okay.
And so it was a 6-cylinder inline engine, adequate power, but you know, right after the war, that was fine. People would accept that. But as time went on, people started looking for something different than Continental 6-cylinder engines.
The market's taken off, everybody wants the latest thing.
They want the
We have-
fastest car, the sleekest
we have
car.
technology that's pre-war, they probably
right.
looking for something
Yeah,
else.
Joseph Fraser, this is a Fraser 1951, and again, the company was Kaiser Fraser Corporation when it originated. 1951, Joseph Fraser leaves the company,
Okay.
and it becomes Kaiser alone.
Wow.
You know, Bill, you talked about the engine, the Continental engine. I mean, Continental built engines for many of the independents, and it really was a good,
Yep.
solid motor
Yeah.
for, you know, in a lot of ways. And one last-ditch effort, I believe they did, was they added a supercharger, or tried to add a supercharger to this motor, and they did give it a little extra power, but it simply wasn't enough for what the
Yeah.
public wanted.
Yep.
So we get to the Kaiser era, and look at this. This is really got to be something special. We're looking at something, Bill, they call this the Dragon?
Yeah, again, by now, Fraser's out of the picture.
Okay.
And so it's all Kaiser, but then Kaiser does have to appeal to the whole market. So the Dragon was really the high end of Kaiser. But really some unique styling. You know, we go from the same body in 51, and this is a
Yeah.
53.
Well, I mean, the difference with the
Yep.
split glass.
Yep.
We don't have, and then the Widow's Peak,
Yep.
almost like the car is looking at, this reminds me of Eddie Munster.
Exactly.
Munster.
Yeah.
But this styling was also carried over on the back.
Back window,
This
same thing.
really, almost like a dragon skin, heavily,
Yep.
very, very cool. I mean, this is predating when we knew vinyl tops back in the 70s. But this car, this was also, now he's on his own, Kaiser's on his own, so
Yep.
he's trying to appeal to some specialty model, maybe do something a little different to separate himself from the pack, as far as the model goes. This probably couldn't have, this would have been a real unique vehicle.
This is very, and you'll notice it has a very plush interior.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful interior on this car.
Wonderful.
A lot of chrome, a lot of stainless. I mean, it was
Wonderful
a really,
upholstery.
really nice high-end car.
Yeah, I also like the side design where, you know, the accent by the rear door,
Yeah.
how it dips down and flares
And then
back.
kicks back forward.
And you get to see that in
Oh, that's
future
that
models.
the C-pillar. The
Other-
C-pillar goes back
Yep.
and then kicks forward again. Very,
These
very
babies
nice.
were made in Willow Run. And
Yeah, all Kaiser Frasers were made here in Ypsilanti, Willow Run. Yep.
This car was almost $4,000 back
Yep,
in the day.
yep.
So to keep them going, what did they do to try to reinvent themselves? I mean, they have to, Joe. When the market's moving, you've got to either run fast or get something that you can to feed the money machine. And how did they do that?
Well, I think one of the things they did was they came out with this Henry J. They needed a lower price car to keep themselves competitive.
Look how
You know,
much
their
smaller
price
the
point was
Henry
getting
J
high.
is. Bill, this thing, I mean, it's much smaller.
Yep. Yep, low price car, the price tag is $1,499, and when you compare that to the price of the Kaiser Dragon,
Almost
th-
$4,000.
this is an inexpensive car.
But it's, I mean, it looks like it's smaller, but it's got some styling back there, almost
A
like.
little bit.
Joe, would you call this something from the Cadillac?
Looks like that came from some airplane that
Airplane?
GM took the tail from, and
Taillights
little
put
swoop.
inboard?
Yeah, what I find interesting about
Yeah.
this car is that it was the Henry J, but it was also sold at Sears stores
sure was.
under the Allstate name.
Absolutely, yep.
And did you mention something about it? You could buy it as a
Yeah,
kit?
one of the Henry J. people came in and told us that, yeah, you could buy houses at Sears, and they would ship it in on a rail, and you'd have all the parts and directions on how to put it together, that you could buy this as a kit also. And I was told that it was no welds in it at all, that it's an assembly by bolts.
Now, one thing I remember, I read some road tests on this. This could have been had with either a 4-cylinder
That's
or a
right.
6-cylinder.
That's correct. Yep.
And if you purchased one with a 6-cylinder, 0 to 60 was about 14 seconds.
Whoa.
When Ford was doing it in about 19 seconds.
Yeah,
So
wow.
it was a peppy little car.
Again, small, light.
Small and light,
performance,
and a 6-cylinder engine.
What a cool car. When you talk about all the cool Kaisers, let me tell you, when I saw this thing, I'm looking at a car that, again, Joe, you try to be innovative, much like the Henry J. You try to do a white space vehicle. By that I mean, you're in a place in the market where nobody else is playing. You give an innovative feature.
Yep.
And when we looked at this car, yeah, it had a little bit of that brow that we saw in the Dragon, that little widow's peak there. But there was something special about the trunk on this car, and it turns out, Bill, it's not a trunk at all.
You're right, you're right. What we have here is kind of the beginning of the hatchback design, way back before they ever even called them hatchbacks. But our rear section of the car opens up.
So that would be wow, that's not the trunk, it actually goes down like a truck
Yeah,
tailgate.
and opens up
Clamshell.
in the back.
Clamshell, oh my goodness.
Look at that.
So
Okay.
you have a hatchback, a tailgate, and then you have so you could slide things in. I see you have a picnic basket.
Yep.
I don't know about you, Joe, but I wouldn't trust the sandwiches that are in there.
I think they're a little old by now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a cooler. And it looks to me, Bill, like they've got the wood skids all the way to the,
Yep.
fold the back seat up.
That's correct.
This is like the Chevy Avalanche of,
I'm thinking you can almost get a 4x8 sheet of plywood in the back of this
I
thing.
probably could.
Yeah.
They even sold as an option a thing that would be a filler above the spare tire here to make the deck even so that you could camp in it, sleep in it. Yep.
oh wow,
Amazing.
the Pontiac Aztec lives again.
All over, yeah, all over, without cup holders.
Now they call
Yep.
this the Traveler.
Traveler, yes.
Okay, and then this was kind of like the SUV kind of camper, Volkswagen camper van, all those cool things that we considered
Yep.
unique in the 60s. This is way ahead
This
of its
is
time.
way ahead of
Yep.
its time.
And they didn't do too many of these. They said some famous Hollywood types like this car. I guess this one said
Burl Ives
Burl Ives was the
had owned
first
a-
buyers of this
Yeah,
car.
sort of fits Burl Ives.
So what happened then to the company? And it was doing all these innovative things. I mean,
Well, they had a V8 in design. Again, we're talking about we're getting into the 50s, and Oldsmobile had their big V8 that came out, and Chevy by 55 had its V8 out, and Ford in 54 had its V8. So they were under pressure to design a V8, which they did do, but to have the financial backing to
Yeah.
complete that kind of engineering and get it out, they just were not competitive with General Motors and Ford. One of the other stories that I've heard about the reasons for Hudson's demise and Kaiser's demise and all the small independents is that Ford and General Motors were all going for number one.
Yep.
And when they're going for number one, they're going for number one, at all costs. At all costs, to the extent that they would sell their cars at cheaper prices
Discount them.
so that they keep that number one standing, and that's something the independents really couldn't do. They couldn't afford to do that.
no, when you talk about small automakers trying to make it big
Yep.
in this market, in Detroit with the big three,
Yeah.
a big part of that's got to be Tucker. Let's go
Yeah.
over and take a little bit of Ypsilanti's Tucker history as well.
Yeah, sure.
Well, you can't really come to the Ypsilanti Automotive Heritage Museum and not talk about Preston
Absolutely.
Tucker and the Tucker automobile. Now, I know a lot of people probably saw the movie. What was it, Jeff Bridges, Joe?
Jeff Bridges
Jeff
played
Bridges.
Tucker.
I saw the movie. I was back at Auto Week at the time. We actually we went to the movie together, and we put the whole story on the cover. Kevin Wilson,
Yeah.
co-editor of mine, was there, and we loved the whole story of Tucker.
Yep.
If you folks aren't familiar with it, Tucker was very innovative. He was trying to start a car company in the middle of this war we were talking about everybody wanting to be number one, and these little pesky independents were getting in the way of the big three, battling it out, who had big finances, big money, big factories, big labor. Everything was going in their power. But we had Preston. Bill, tell me a little bit about the Tucker. Now, before we scare anybody, they only built 51 of these. This isn't a real Tucker.
That's right, John. Yeah, Preston Tucker came to Ypsilanti. His mother-in-law lived here in town.
Okay.
And so Preston and his wife came to Ypsilanti and actually lived with his mother-in-law just 2 streets up and a block over.
Incredible.
And it was here in Ypsilanti that he came to Ypsilanti after being in New Orleans manufacturing boats with a partner during the war. and he came to town in 1943, 1944, he designed this car while living here in town. This is, as I said, not an original Tucker, but it's from the movies.
It's from the movies, the movie product.
Yep.
You couldn't possibly get any of the Tuckers from around the world and have enough of them in that movie, so they had to
Right.
build fiberglass replicas.
Exactly right.
When this car actually was put on a Ford chassis and driven around.
Yep.
Yes,
which
Ford
kind of-
LTD chassis,
So in
75
the movie,
chassis.
I guess you'd think it was a Tucker.
Yeah, it rolled off the assembly line, and Jeff Bridges drove it down the street while they filmed it driving down the street, too.
Wow.
Yep.
So you didn't have to mess with an absolute priceless collectible.
Yep.
But the car was unique in very many ways. A lot of safety features and the crash features. The way he designed this car, Joe, you said something about the headlight that followed your eyes?
No, well, when you turn your steering wheel, there's a center-mounted headlamp, and that headlight turned as you turned the car, so it kept the headlamp focused on where you're going.
Powertrain was totally different. It had the engine in the back.
Engine and transmission in back.
So much like a front drive
That's
car
correct.
today, where
Yep.
the powertrain is all one
That's
unit.
exactly
engine and
right.
Transaxle, if you
Yep.
will,
Yep.
was all together.
That's correct.
But those, very smartly, he used surplus from the war, bought up a ton of old helicopters.
Yeah, he actually used a helicopter engine, air-cooled helicopter engine in the beginning. He ran into some troubles with the air cooling, and it did become water-cooled eventually in his engineering. But yeah, he used helicopter engines.
What a wonderful, first of all, Joe, I mean, when you look at these cars, think of the era, they were really cool looking.
Yep.
Oh, way ahead of its time when you
Yeah.
think about it. He had a padded dashboard. He had a lot of safety features in this car that no one ever thought of. And again, you said he started designing this
Yep.
in the early 40s.
Unbelievable.
So this is pretty amazing.
And a great story, folks, if you want to get on Netflix or rent the movie,
Yeah.
we're not going to spoil it for you. If you don't know anything about Preston Tucker and this Tucker motor car, you really should go get a book, rent the movie, watch it. This is really Detroit manufacturing history at its best.
Yeah.
But you told me, Bill, that Tucker had some other impact here in the area,
Yep.
and it was because of a local person that lived here in Ypsilanti that saved this piece of
Yep.
Tucker history. What are we talking about when we talk about that?
Yeah, this goes back now to the before World War II started. Preston Tucker designed a armored car with a gun turret on top.
Okay, it was on top of the car.
Yep,
Okay.
and tried to sell it to the U.S. government, they weren't interested. Attracted the attention of the Netherlands, they wanted to buy it.
Okay.
Hitler overran the Netherlands before a deal was ever completed. The U.S. government again looked at his armored car with the gun turret on top and says, we don't like your armored car, but we do like that gun turret. Preston Tucker had it in his name. He had it patented under his name.
Okay, so he owned it. It was
Yep, he
his
owned
design.
it. Yep, and so he let the U.S. government build it under his patent, and those gun turrets went on the B-17 bombers. Before the war, the guns were, there were cutouts in the fuselage where
Right.
the guns just pointed through cutouts. And with Preston Tucker's gun turret, they abandoned that and put these gun turrets on top with twin machine guns, put the gun turrets on bottoms with twin machine guns, went on to B-24s, B-29s, PT boats, a major impact on the air
just
war in
planes,
World
boats
War II.
also.
Such
Wow.
a major part of that design, plus something that we recognize as part of those fighters and
Yep.
those bombers.
Yep.
That was an integral part of their success.
Sure, right.
And it was done by an automotive pioneer right
Yep.
here in
Yep.
Ypsilanti,
Yep.
Preston Tucker. Well, you know what? There's a lot more in Ypsilanti that happened in Willow Run. And after these independents left, the big guys got involved. Let's go take a look at some of the footprint that General Motors had at
Yep.
Willow Run.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, you know, we can't really talk about Ypsilanti and its wonderful automotive heritage until we also include what happened after all those little independent guys came and went, and when General Motors got involved. And
Yeah.
Bill, you told me it was kind of by accident.
Yeah, it certainly was by accident. A welding accident at Livonia Transmission Plant, which was the sole provider of hydromatic transmissions for General Motors. A welding accident set the plant on fire, and the plant absolutely burned to the ground. This is 1953. General Motors finds itself, I don't have any source of transmissions anymore.
Where are we going to build
Yeah,
it?
where are we going to build them? Kaiser Fraser was in a decline,
Okay.
and they had the giant Willow Run plant. So General Motors had discussions with Kaiser Fraser. As a result of the discussions, Kaiser Fraser moved to Toledo and consolidated with Willys in Toledo.
Willys over there,
This was the beginning of the death of Kaiser Fraser,
Right.
and General Motors took over the whole Willow Run what was the bomber plant that became the Kaiser-Frazer plant.
Well, let's face it, that place is so big, you wouldn't need it all to build transmissions.
Yep.
So they probably looked around and said, you know, there's some other uses for this factory.
Yep, they took it and they took what they needed to build transmissions,
Sure.
and the part that they built transmissions was really the assembly line for the
Okay.
for the B-24s, and then they took part of it and it became a Fisher body, and then they actually did some add-ons, and it became a General Motors assembly division. So the Willow Run complex was GM Powertrain, which was hydromatic, and GMAD, which was assembly.
Since they're doing assembly, Joe, one of our favorite Chevrolets, they decided that this could be the home of a brand new car, totally different kind of car for Chevrolet. Yes, they had a wonderful compact. They had the Chevy 2s. Chevy was always known for great little compact cars, but this car kind of set the world on its ear when it came out.
It certainly did, John, and it was really unique in a lot of ways. I mean, it had an air-cooled engine, a rear engine, air-cooled transaxle.
Sounds like Mr. Tucker.
It was small. It was, you know, it was much more stylish than the Ford Falcon. Again, the first year 60s, same as Falcon. So, you know, when you look at this car, it was a sporty little car at a low price, handled really well, good performance, and very successful.
Unique technology because the weight was in the back.
Great in the snow.
Right in the snow. A pancake engine, opposed cylinder engine, which is all, and it did not look like anything that was on the road, but which brought in a whole new buyer. Now this car kind of took off, didn't it, Joe?
It did. It took off really well, and you know, shortly after it was introduced, they had some sportier, higher horsepower versions. In fact, you can get with one version 4 single-barrel carburetors.
Wow.
Ultimately, it was turbocharged and had 180 horsepower, and so it was pretty exciting car to drive.
Then why did we wind up, Bill? You've got this fantastic. I've never seen any Corvair look like that. Why is that?
Well, the reason why I've never seen one, it's the only one that ever existed.
Okay, well, there you go.
One
Good
of
explanation. Yeah, it's a special car that was built and used in the 1960 New York Auto Show.
Wow.
And it was built, Joe, you're telling me it was built for the daughter of...
Bill Mitchell's daughter.
Bill Mitchell's daughter?
Had it designed and
Yeah.
built for her 16th birthday.
Wow.
So that's at a time when you could do things like that. Today, I don't think you could get away with doing anything. And you know, it has so many unique features: the side grille and the quarter panel,
wire
the wire wheels, a beautiful interior. What
On
a
my
really
16th
unique
birthday,
car.
all I got was a set of
16 candles.
no, I got a pair of tennis shoes. I think they were Red Ball Jets, made by U.S. Rubber down at Uniroyal.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I got. I didn't get a car.
No.
Now,
Those are
you've
beautiful.
got another car here, but it looks like somebody took the wheels off it, Joe.
Yeah, I think this is one of the Fisher body cars. Bill, you can tell us a little bit more about
Yeah,
this.
well, you know, General Motors, when they had an assembly division, they usually had a division of Fisher body not far away,
Right.
so they didn't have the transportation costs. So as part of the GM complex, there was a Fisher body, a portion of it that built the bodies and moved them not very far to assembly for Corvairs. And this was the last one. They didn't have any wheels and transmissions and engines to put on, so it was a leftover body that
So
we
this
were
is
able to
virtually
put-
the last
Yeah.
Corvair
The last Corvair
body ever
That's
produced.
correct.
This
Yeah.
VIN has XXX, so
Yep,
folks, if
yep.
you thought you owned the last Corvair, I think it's sitting here in the museum.
There we go.
But there are some other, now, you've got this really cool race car, Joe. Now, this car actually was a record holder, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Now this is interesting. This car was raced at Bonneville, the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah. You know, it was hopped up with an Iscadarian cam, some Weber carburetors, and did 139.2 miles an hour at Bonneville. So about 140 miles an hour out of a air-cooled 6-cylinder Corvair is really amazing. It's incredible. So you got a lot of performance out of the car. And again, this was, you'll notice this is that second generation, the 65 and later.
Right.
Beautiful styling on this car. Thin pillar roof line and a lot of glass. Nice car.
Bill, the second gen was, I know enthusiasts love the car. It started to get really modern styling, looked gorgeous, but
Yep.
then there was some guy who wanted to save us from the horrific automakers who were
Yep.
making things that killed us, some guy named Ralph.
Yep.
And Ralph wrote a book saying that these cars were unsafe at any speed. Of course,
That's correct. Yep.
they weren't. But that kind of put the end of the Corvair.
Yep, I think Ralph did bury it. We were talking earlier about somebody fixing data, so you make sure you come up with the conclusion you want to come up with. And historically, we look back and we think Ralph Nader did do that. He sort of loaded the deck.
Yeah, many cars were found that way out of existence when someone wanted to make a name for themselves, and of course the Corvair was one. You know, you've got a couple other things here at the museum. Bill, tell us a little bit about the fact that when we come down here, the history here is all over the map.
Yeah, we have a Lincoln here. The way it fits in our Ypsilanti history is that it was sold by Sussy Lincoln Mercury, and so a local dealership here in town. It fits with our manufacturing history in that Lincoln, like Hudson, had hydromatic transmissions in it, so it does fit in our manufacturing history that way too.
People don't realize that the
That
hydromatic...
GM was selling transmissions to its competitor.
Yep.
Go figure.
And then right, I'll tell you what, when I see this, I realize how great American auto manufacturing was. This is a remarkable piece, just to look at this cutaway, to show how well constructed our wonderful cars were, the kind of history you can show off here.
Yep.
I mean, this is an Oldsmobile. Remember the old X-frames?
Yes, yes.
Those things were amazing.
This is in 1940.
Yeah, Oldsmobile had the first hydromatic,
The very first
and
hydromatic.
so that's what this is part of, right?
This wonderful cutaway. I'm
Yep.
telling you guys, this is well. This has been a treat for us here at Cars in Context to come down to the Automotive Heritage Museum here. Bill, if they want to get more information about it, do you have a website?
Yeah, we have a website, www.ypsiautoheritage.org. Also have a phone number, area code 734-482-5200. We're open Tuesday through Sunday, 1 to 4. Operate the museum basically mostly by volunteers.
You got to come on down. These guys love their cars. It's a wonderful place to be. Again, Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
We enjoyed it. Joe, as usual, a great history lesson. I hope folks,
Thanks,
for
John.
you,
My
you had a
pleasure.
lot of fun visiting here at the Ypsilanti Automotive Heritage Museum. Remember, until next time, that knowledge is power. I'm your host, John Clor, and thanks for watching.